This is the first episode of a podcast I'm starting with Ben Eblen. If you're not familiar with either of us, we are both artists and YouTubers, and we are independent, trying to figure out the whole art thing on our own. This episode is going to be about starting personal projects and trying to commit to them to the point where they actually start becoming something, whether it's looking for followers or an income or any of that kind of stuff. And this particular project or this podcast is our version of starting a personal project. Thanks for clicking on the episode, and I hope you enjoy.
This is what it's like, starting a personal project. You don't know what it's going to be half the time. Or what you think it's going to be in the beginning is not what it's going to be in the end. Like
100%. Well, and this is like untitled. We talked about it, and we're like, we'll just figure it out as we go.
The only thing I know it's going to be like art-centric. Like based a lot around like art and like what we're trying to do with like content.
Well, and like and trying to make it work financially.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Yeah,
like trying to figure out how to get people to see your stuff. So maybe editing or changing the way you present things online to make it seem a little bit more palatable for a particular platform, or like how to make a web page to where people feel like they're getting value, how to make something to where it's not scamming people, but also providing enough value to justify someone buying something without crazy promises and stuff.
Because that is one of the hardest things, at least internally for me, is like, charging for something. It's like, I'll do this shit for free in a way. Like a lot of the time, it's just like, this is fun because it's so fun. It's not like a job. It's not like, fuck, I've got to go to work. And you better pay me because I'm here, right? And I'm wasting my time here, so you got to pay me money because it's like, no, I love this shit. So it is a tricky game, and it's fun trying to figure it out as well. So,
and the money stuff is something that I think most people have hangups about. I mean, going and making something that you really care about and expecting or hoping or needing people to buy something from you can ruin the fun of doing stuff creatively.
Definitely.
And I feel like, to be completely candid, Ben and I talk every week just to talk about our feelings, pretty much.
Yeah.
We just share, like, I'm super anxious about this post, you know?
Yeah,
I'm super anxious about this thing. And a lot of it is like, I think the hardest part about making this thing sustainable is the putting yourself out there and asking for money and keeping it fun for a long period of time.
That's the biggest thing, because as soon as you start making a little bit, or not even a little bit, but enough to be like, okay, this is my goal now, this is the thing I'm doing, then the whole mindset changes to what's at least in my head. A lot of people aren't like this, but like, what's optimal now? It's like, what's optimal to try and, one, make it fun, but two, make it so other people engage with it, and three, how do you make some money out of this thing? And then that can become job-like. So it's really, I'm kind of in the middle of that right now. Like no, that's about it really. It's just once it becomes a job, it does, like, finding that balance and how to keep the joy of doing it.
And I feel like also, but when I got into this stuff, I was a little bit naive about the tedious nature of trying to be like a YouTuber or somebody who makes content online. Because the more I do this stuff, the more I'm like, oh my God, 90% of it is editing. Like 90% of it is sitting myself down in a chair and hitting my head against a wall just to get an edit correct, you know? Or to get the sound synced up, you know?
Yeah.
Before we were recording this, I guess I could play it really quickly. We were trying to figure out a method for syncing it as easily as possible. And I'm probably going to have to spend 15 or 20 minutes syncing everything together.
Yeah.
And I think the annoying part about that is the more successful you become, the more of that tedious work you have to do, even though the creative work remains the same across all levels of scale, I think.
And then it comes the time where I'm kind of getting to this transition period, probably in the next year or so, of like, all right, getting other people on board. And how does that look to help you do it? because I can't just be sitting here. Well, I can really like just I've got to do it a lot myself, like the edits and making the content. But there is going to become a point where it doesn't make as much sense to throw all my time and burn myself out just like editing all the time. So it's finding that balance as well, which we'll talk about when it comes to that, like what that whole process is going to be like.
And it's scary. I mean, taking on and paying somebody and potentially taking on their like livelihood and maybe messing that up, because I mean, I think I know this speaking from experience, but a lot of the successful content creators I know are really lazy, and they'll spend like a day doing something completely unrelated, completely unproductive that ends up getting nothing done. You know, and then they have to rush towards the end of the week to get a piece of content out to like pay the bills. I mean, I think we were talking about this in terms of, the context of this whole thing. Like us making a personal project is this web show or whatever you want to call it. And the starting of it, the way you get to the point where those problems start arising is that you just start doing it. Like you start doing it badly. It's not ideal situation. It's not an ideal scenario, but kind of letting it, kind of like walking yourself down the path and letting it become what it's going to become without being too tied up in the outcome.
Which is easy to say. Fucking hard to do. Because it's like, I like to plan personally. I like to get all my ducks in a row. But I've done it enough times now with like multiple things, whether it be like posts or YouTube videos or like products or whatever, to know that like what my first idea is not what it's going to turn out to be. Or at least the way that I got it, the way that I go about getting to the thing is not the way that I initially thought it was going to be. If that makes sense? Like it's, the amount of times that I have to reshoot a freaking YouTube video, that's something, I think that just comes with practice, because I've posted like 4 videos. So it's like, I'll get better with practice. But it's just one of those things that you don't realize until you're in the thick of it. And it's just like a drawing or painting as well. Like, I don't know if you have this, but it's like you're all like amped and like super keen about, all right, I'm going to draw this thing and it's looking cool and like the idea's happening and the rough sketch is looking good. And then you start doing the painting or you go deeper into the details and it's looking like absolute ass. And you're like, fuck. And then it's like just a long slog to get out of like that shit stage. And then right at the end or like near the end, it's like, oh, okay, it's not too bad. It's just like this long period of just suck. And then it sort of comes together in the end. Or at least the feeling of like you're happy enough with it in the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like no matter at which stage you are in your like art career, that feeling of self-doubt and that I'm a total piece of shit remains with you throughout the whole process.
Yep.
And at a certain point, you have to push up against, making enough money to make payroll to, keep the ball rolling for getting, some product out there just to pay the bills. And that, payroll is dependent on you finding it within yourself to go do a drawing and to make it good enough for people to enjoy it.
Like that was a massive eye-opener with Slew's like documentary on Proco, where Stan was like, yeah, we've got to make like a shit ton of money every month to keep this machine running. And it's like, fuck, that's a lot of responsibility. It's sick. It's fucking awesome. It's something to strive for, definitely. At least I'd love to do something like that. But it's a big fucking, whoa.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think for us, it's like, as we're developing more and more of our, identities online, when you do experiments and they fail, they actually genuinely do make you feel scared and afraid for the future, because when content doesn't do well or it isn't received well, then that will generally reflect in your income and your ability to take those kind of risks.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. As soon as you start tying the stuff that you put out to a monetary like value, it's like exactly right. It's like, oh, is this okay? It's less of a like at least for me, if a post does quote unquote well, it's more of a relief than like a happy feeling. It's like, oh, fooled them again. All right, next one. Fingers crossed next time it's going to work. Like the algorithm's going to be fixed and it's just going to go back to like nothing. Like it's, yeah.
Well, and you believe that it's temporary, no matter, again, at all levels, that you're a fraud and it's going to, you know.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to go away, literally. I feel like that, like every week there's like a moment of like, this is all going to go away soon. So it's like, which at the same time is a nice little motivator. It's not, if you can harness that, it's like cool. Because if everything was peachy and everything was just like humming along, great. And I'm just like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't be as motivated to like figure out the next product or like experiment with content and that kind of thing. So if you can look at it in that way, I think that's kind of beneficial. Oh yeah, getting inspired by others is the best, because it's just like, oh, sick. I didn't think that would work. It does. Cool. I'll give it a whirl. Something like that, or whatever. Just like with style, like with like painting or drawing or anything. Like there's so many things that like intertwine with like art. It's just like, all right, my stuff's looking a bit stale, or I'm feeling a bit stale. The first thing I do is look at other people. Look at other people's art, styles, processes, techniques, and then give it a shot. And then you can do that with basically anything creative. And that's the same with like content, at least for me.
Well, and I think trying to, like, if you're trying to be successful online, doing a couple things, like not tying the performance of the drawing or the Instagram post or whatever to your self-worth, and also just being open to the experimental side of it. Like, I've been trying to post a lot more reels on Instagram and YouTube this week as just like a pure experiment for a different format for making stuff.
Yeah.
They're super rough. They take just a few minutes to make. They're just some really loose ideas on specific drawing concepts, and they are not performing well at all on Instagram, you know. And I think that is yes, but that has bummed me out. They're doing well on YouTube, or at least they're doing better on YouTube, which is cool to see. But I think it's like I have the only difference between somebody and maybe the only difference between me and somebody just starting out is that I've also gone through that process of making videos that no one cares about for long enough to be like, okay, this is just part of the process to trying something new.
And it's a good
you
point.
Have to walk down
as well, that you mentioned like how they're not doing as well on Instagram, but on YouTube they're like doing okay. And that's another thing, like looking at other people's quote unquote success or numbers, and then someone extrapolates that to say, oh, YouTube's the place to be because all my shorts are doing better on YouTube than Instagram. I'm the complete opposite. My reels would do so much better on Instagram than YouTube. So it's also taking that into account of like each person is kind of different, and you can't sort of like measure yourself against, like, you know this, and like people know this anyway, like don't measure yourself against other people, blah 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 blah. We all do it. You can't help it. But just keeping that in mind as well. I wish I knew that like a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, and it's like no, it's hard not to make those comparisons.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also like you can't copy someone else's formula and expect to have complete success doing exactly what they do. A lot of this stuff is self-discovery and being honest with yourself in the way you want to share ideas. Like your voice as its own unique thing, I think can be as valuable or as recognized as anybody else's. I think it's just your ability to kind of trust yourself. And going back to everything, I guess the conversation as a whole, with all of these potential risks of like identity or being embarrassed or feeling like a failure, how does someone actually get started taking those risks, you know?
Like to not into that scene, people talk about it like that's like
good question, Christian. How do they do it? I get it, like starting small, right? That would be my like overall what I try and do, what I say I try and do is sometimes not what I do. But a good idea to start would be start small. And what does that look like? Maybe it's doing testing out short form video versus doing longer form YouTube videos to begin with, or testing out ideas on Twitter or in your stories and that kind of stuff versus like, I think of them as like little bets, right? I've talked about this with my mate Francis. We got another podcast, and it was like this idea in software called small bets, which is like you place small bets of your time on small products, and then you have kind of like a portfolio of all these small bets that you've placed out versus just going all in on one thing, you know what I mean? Because you could spend like 6 months to a year editing one video and then it gets like 100 views. I would much prefer to have like 20 smaller videos where I've learned something and then sort of gives me a direction versus then just one massive one that I've just like Hail Married and just be like, fuck, I hope this does all right. And then, you know what I mean?
Even if it does really well too. Yeah. Like even if the video that you spend, 6 months on does really well.
Yeah, then what?
Having to follow up on the next one is still hard.
That's something that I wasn't prepared with. Like if something does objectively like, okay, that did well, you're like, fuck, that took me ages to make. I've got to make another one just as good. Like that feeling fucking sucks. Like it does take the creativity side out of it, definitely, which I'm trying to get over personally. It's just a personal thing. Like no one's forcing me to do any of this shit. It's just, yeah, if one does well, then you're like, fuck, I've got to follow it up. And then it doesn't do as well. And you're like, it's all over. Time to pack up. Yep. Nah, it's all, let's look for a job doing something else. Like it's a crazy, weird fucking roller coaster. But I think like trying to callous yourself to all those, that kind of doubt, it just sort of gets smaller and smaller. Like those little voices as you do more or put out more, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for anyone that didn't know or doesn't know, I worked for this company called Proco for a long time, like 4 or 5 years, kind of in the background as just like the content guy. And I mean, I struggle with this stuff a lot, but I think the thing I observed from Stan was that it's more about like the longevity of doing something for a long time versus the successes. Because there would be videos that would get like 10,000 views that would have 100 hours of man hours between the whole team put into them.
And for context, that's like that's an underperformer on Proco's channel. If you're not familiar,
yeah.
That's like yeah. Where some people will be like, 10,000 views, fuck yeah, I'd love that. Like no, where you usually getting like 100 to 200,000, even millions of views on any one given video.
Yeah, the baseline is like 50 or 60,000, and that's kind of a lower estimate, and then there would be some other videos that get millions of views, and the reaction to them would generally be the same. It's like, okay, on to the next one. Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I think looking at the failures in the same way you look at successes as more of like educational things or lessons versus it being a definitive end or start to a thing. Like with these reels that I'm making or this content that I'm making, like I started a podcast, I've done a bunch of different content ideas, and none of them have really worked in the way that I really need them to work to make to make a living off of it at least. And then more recently, I've been experimenting with like taking the same content and making it maybe a little bit more accessible and palatable for people online. Changing the thumbnail, making it a little bit snappier in the edit, and the views have gone up like my baseline went from like 300 views to like 3,000 or 4,000, and it's like they was not changing the content at all. It was just the presentation of it.
Packaging is so huge
entirely.
We love this now. We talk about this all the time. Like the how you position the stuff that you put out can be so powerful. Like it's unbelievable. Like you had one pop off that's like what, at like 150, 200,000 views or something?
180.
Yeah.
I think about 190,000
yeah.
now. Yeah, which is strange because my previous baseline again was like 300 views, and then I had another one following up that shortly after that's at like 80,000.
Yeah.
And I don't think I could have gotten there without all the turkeys, or I shouldn't call them turkeys. They weren't it wasn't bad content, but it was.
I've not heard that before. Is that the turkeys? Yeah. Is that an American thing?
I guess so. I mean, at Watts, they would refer to bad drawings as turkeys. You have to get the turkeys out of you.
Oh, there you go. All right, learning something new about the American culture.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think the lesson there is like, even if you're starting a comic book or trying to be an illustrator or writing songs or making YouTube videos, you have to produce a ton of volume just to figure out what the thing is and what you're trying to do in the first place. And some people get there faster than others, but that doesn't matter as much as you just going along your own path and figuring it out.
Other people's successes and failures has nothing to do with you. Really, like it doesn't. Like with it doesn't. Like it doesn't affect you at all. But it does. I think there's also something to be said if you're feeling like, oh, people are gonna like judge the views, or like if a post doesn't do well, it's probably because you're doing a little bit of it yourself on other people. You're just like looking at what you're kind of doing, like whether it's consciously or subconsciously, like the little comments that you say in your head about, oh, if a post didn't do well of someone else's, or you're looking at someone's growth or decline. Is something to keep in mind as well, of like how you're viewing other people's stuff and the internal comments that you have, which you might be, I guess the word projecting would be, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's natural to like want to look at what other people are up to and kind of get a gauge for it. But ultimately, I think a lot of the time it could be more detrimental than positive to compare yourself to other people. And that comparison is kind of the root of where a lot of the anxiety comes in. Like, I feel like I feel entitled to more reach online because I've done a few things that have done well on YouTube or whatever,
That
and that entitlement,
so much,
I think,
that, though.
bums me out.
When I see people post that, it just makes me so annoyed. It's like, it is that, like, although sometimes I feel it as well, I get it. It's just like, fuck, stop. Like, you think that post is going to get you more reach, is it? Like, saying that the algorithm's fucking broken or whatever. Like, it just frustrates me. Anyway, we don't need to go on a rant. Maybe we don't start fucking like slinging shots on this first one.
Sort of later on.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the episode. I just wanted to say, if you'd like to support Ben or I, go and check out the links in the description to the courses below. Ben has an 8-hour walkthrough of how he creates his artwork, and that includes the 8-hour video walkthrough as well as a 50-plus page PDF. And then there are a few courses to Michael Hampton stuff, Ryan Benjamin stuff, and I guess some of my own stuff. All of this stuff is funded by us, so your guys' support really does help us make more content like this. Thanks, and back to the episode.
I mean, I think with everything that you do, it's a risk. And whether you're doing something really big or really small, it feels the same, Like, an analogy that some business mentor, some guy used this thing with me where it's like, he told me it's as difficult to start a restaurant as it is like a $10 million company. Because at the restaurant, you're there nights, you're, having to deal with getting your food approved by the local government or something, or dealing with waiting staff, making the food, dealing with orders. And that might be 12 or 15-hour days. And you might have to put in the same amount of work to start something much, much bigger. Yeah. Even the same amount of risk. It just, I think, depending on what scale you want to operate at. But I think the lesson there is like the video that did 190,000 views so far. I flew to New Zealand for that. Like, I took a huge risk. I spent a lot of money, on Airbnbs, flights, like going someplace I didn't know anybody, just kind of figuring it out. And I had no idea that video would do as well as it did. And I suspect I'm going to put as much effort or more into another video in the future that I'm going to hope does well that won't do well, you know?
And the ones that
And
you
the-
think that aren't going to do well, and you're like, it didn't take me as long. That's another thing that I've learned. The amount of time that you put into something isn't directly correlated with the success that it's going to have. Some of the quickest thrown together stuff that I've put out there has been the best performing. And you're just like, fuck, how do you, like, but that's the fun of it. It's like figuring out this game. It's like, okay, this works. Why? And it's just, I guess it's just trying to figure out the why of stuff, but also trying to keep it fun, man. Like, you can get real content brain with stuff, and I think that could be at a detriment to just having fun with it, which in turn can affect the quality of the content. Because I'm putting out my best stuff, I think, when I'm truly interested in what I'm putting out. I'm not thinking about necessarily the most optimal thing or whatever, maybe in the packaging of it, but it's like, if I can just have fun doing the thing and then put out, really what my goal with it all was just be like, yeah, come and follow along with my journey. I'm really interested in this thing. This is what I've found out about it. Here you go. Keeping that in mind versus like, all right, what's going to do well? How can I optimize the blah, 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 blah. I think you can really over optimize it and just suck the soul out of it sometimes.
Yeah, it gets really easy, and I think it's easy to, for a lot of creative jobs, at a certain point, it could be as technical business-wise as like being a lawyer or a doctor or selling, medical supplies to a hospital or something, and I think the idea there is trying to follow the interest as much as possible. Like if you have two paths, walking down the paths that like one path is pure smart decision, the most logical thing to make the most amount of money, or the thing that you have more interest in. I think it's, at least with creative jobs, more beneficial for your mental health and longevity of your career to pursue the thing that you have more interest in, because you're just going to do a better job at it. And I mean, one personal case for you is like the Plain Jane stuff. Like you could go and make another digital product, no overhead, you don't have to learn anything new. You don't have to learn how to resin cast, and it'll probably make more money per unit. But
oh fuck yeah,
you're more curious and interested in making sculptures. And
mind you, I am doing that.
Physical products.
I'm trying to do it. The issue is I'm burning the candle at both ends, and I'm trying to do it all, which is not smart, and I'm fucking tired as shit. But it's you're exactly right. Like it's following the interests, but at the same time, I think I've gone too far in that direction where I'm not filming stuff. I'm just like in my own little bubble and I'm trying to figure stuff out. And I've got to really remind myself like, okay, you've got to film this stuff to put it out, to be able to keep doing this thing that I'm really interested in as well. Like and I think just getting interested in the marketing and the business side. I think the marketing and business is like a bit like a bad word, or it's just like at least in the art space, I feel like a lot of, it's just like an afterthought for a lot of people. It's like I've got to market. Yeah, fuck it, bloody oath you do. Like, how else is anyone going to see your stuff or become interested in your stuff? And having that be a part of the art itself, we can get all wanky with it, but like getting as excited about the marketing and the business as the thing that you're making as well. I think that's the sweet spot. Like trying to foster a bit of that. Because I was talking to, what's his face? Patrick. What's his, Yeah. And on his podcast, and he was like, oh yeah, business is, used to think it was terrible, and I'm not a fan of business, and da 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 da. I'm like, why? This is business right now. Like we're like helping each other, like do that kind of thing. And he was like, oh yeah, right. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Like, and business doesn't mean like, just sitting in front of a spreadsheet all day. Like there's part of that when it comes down to the dollars and cents, but there's part of it. Like I'm catching up with a mate today that like helped me with the resin casting. Like our initial contact was business centric. It was like, okay, cool. I've got somewhat of a following. Potentially this could become something. I'll help you out. And will be a little bit of a shout out. And then you create relationships that turn into like real, like friendships as well. So also like reaching out to people and figuring out like, and even our contact in the beginning was somewhat business related because you contacted me through Proco, like under that umbrella. And it's not just to like I know there's a potential in the future to do something or not, but it was an exploratory kind of like contact with business. So it doesn't have to be this one like sucky thing. It can be fun. Like it really can be, I reckon.
100%. Yeah. Well, and it's like, you know, I remember talking to, I hadn't heard about you before Stan told me about you, and I saw your stuff and we talked about it and like, oh yeah, that guy should totally like be selling stuff. And I contacted you with the intention of like, oh, let's see if we can get like you on a Proco video or something, and put you on the Proco website. And that hasn't happened yet, but it also led to us like talking every week. Us talking about like how to, you know, I'd like to think that I helped encourage you to go and make your Gumroad, which, you know, helped to make you some money in cash and stuff.
Shit, yeah, it definitely did. Yeah.
Well, and it's like, and then you've helped me a lot trying to just make my social media stuff more palatable and more interesting just for presentation's sake. And that's helped me gain a lot of confidence online and my own independent stuff away from any other entity. And it also led to like me going to Australia and staying with you for a couple weeks.
Hell
and,
yeah, dude.
You know, seeing some kangaroos and
that's
and
it.
stuff.
That was the main point.
Like,
You just wanted to use me to get to see some bloody kangaroos. That's the whole
100%.
reason.
Yeah, to eat some kangaroo too. Yeah.
Dude, first thing. All right, quickly. First thing that this guy wanted to do as soon as he got off the fucking plane, he's like, I want to eat a kangaroo. I'm like, you bloody savage. Okay. So we went to the supermarket.
I think
got some kangaroo. We cooked it up. I think you're a bit delusional.
I'm pretty sure if I waited
when you got off the plane.
I don't know, man. It was like a 17-hour plane ride, or like 23 hours of total transit or something.
What would be the equivalent when I come over there? As soon as I get off the plane, what do I want? Some like McDonald's or something? Like, I don't know.
I mean, kangaroo is such a unique thing to Australia, and I don't know if there's any California specific thing.
I guess California, yeah.
But Buffalo, I mean, we can go to Tijuana maybe. Maybe they have some interesting, you know, thing down there. But I think if I didn't do it right away, I wouldn't have done it. Because
cool. Yep.
it was very gamey, and I think it's like, okay, might as well. You know, I'm in Australia, might as well do a very Australian thing.
It's kind of in Australia, like not many people eat it. It's not like I'm just a weirdo. Like but it's in the supermarket, so it's not that unheard of. But yeah, sorry, tangent. That was, but yeah, no, and then I'm going to the US. Like it's like finding other people in your space. Like I don't understand people that don't want to like help. Well, not even help, but just like discuss this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I've heard about people that don't want to, like they're kind of like standoffish, and that's like whatever, like different personalities and whatever. But I like, get interested in like not even like helping people, but just like this shit is so interesting to me. Like just fucking chill out, have fun with it, and fucking just do the thing. Like easier said than done. But it's you don't know what conversations you have where they can lead to. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, and again, just seeing where things will lead, and you have no idea where something will, like what will happen in the future based off a single conversation that might seem meaningless in the moment. But often, like the conversations that you know someone is having in their art school with someone in their figure drawing class could lead to them getting a job at some really big game company 10 or 15 years down the road, or you know, somebody leading to be able to publish their comic book, or having enough confidence to ask for a mentorship, or you know, an internship, or something leading towards a different path. And like we've talked with a bunch of different people who would tell stories about, you know, going to Comic-Con without a table and figuring it out and just kind of like doing commissions outside, and then the next year coming back, getting a table and improving it year over year. And like if either of us were to go into that conversation that we first had together is, what am I going to get out of this?
Yeah.
What can this person do for me? Then none of this awesome stuff that came out of us just hanging out and having fun would have happened.
No. Yeah, that's gross. That it's like, what can you do? Like you could sense it as well. I don't know if you've had that with many people. Like people then come to you, then it's like they want something, and it's not position. Like I get it, it's business, right? You've got to. There's a way to go about it, you know. Like but there's like I don't even know. There's no one particular scenario that I really want to share, and two that I can like even like put my finger on. But it's just like, yeah, the way that I see it, we're making cool shit, hopefully for a living, or we're trying to anyway, and it's just cool. Like, and that's where it comes back to, like, in the content, the conversations, the business, being interested in the thing and really like getting amped about it. That I think comes through on camera, in the conversations that you have. You know what I mean? And it's
Just starting it and being bad at it, kind of just figuring it out as you go along. I think I understand why somebody might be a little bit, pushy or a little bit, maybe not the coolest person in the world when talking with somebody that they admire or somebody that they hold in high stature or low stature or whatever, because all that anxiety stuff we were talking about before. Like, I think anxiety causes people to do some really weird things sometimes. And I'd be lying if I said, like, maybe I've been that person to other people in the past, where I might have been maybe a little bit like, I don't want to say patronizing or annoying, but I most definitely have at some point in my earlier 20s.
Oh, me too. Yeah, you learn. You get more self-aware. You figure it out, and as you're saying, like, some of these people that like you meet that have like big numbers online and whatever, they're just fucking people, like at the end of the day, like there's nothing magical about them. They've got, it's not like it's actually cool. Like meeting some of these people online that they got like all these followers and blah, 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 and like large net worths or whatever, or how you hear that they have, like, and it's just like, yeah, cool. You're just a dude or a girl, and it's just like, yeah. Are you interested in the thing? Like, that's it. All comes back down to, like, yeah, I reckon just really being interested in the thing that you're doing, and just like conveying that, and like, yeah.
Well, and I think like the strange part about being more like around more and more like quote unquote successful people with like 1 million, 2 million followers online, is seeing their day to day, and the most important lesson there is just how mundane it is and how similar it feels to be working on something that gets 10 million views as it does like 100 views. And the people that I've seen that are like further along on the path of having like a really strong business or social media following or whatever are the people that are able to kind of just find simple enjoyment in like just editing a video, trying to do that in the best way that they possibly can.
Yeah.
Being very intentional about like making a product for another person.
Yep.
Because like the other side of this is like, now that I'm getting more followers online, I am more isolated than I've been for a while. It's just like I'm spending all my time making videos and trying to make stuff for people. Whereas like what I'm trying to say is like, somebody might have 2 million followers, but that does not mean that they're going out and partying every night and having a really extravagant social life.
Yeah. Some people might.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah. Sacrificing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the most important thing to starting any personal project is just like the act of starting, doing what you can with what's in front of you versus waiting for the best case scenario of the right connections, right school, right college, or whatever.
The right platform.
Yeah.
The right algorithm change.
The right algorithm.
Yeah. Nah. Yeah. It's not coming.
It's always hard.
It's always hard.
Yeah.
It's just got to start it. If you've been thinking about doing stuff and you haven't yet, or you're procrastinating that thing, here's your sign as you are procrastinating watching this right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. If you are waiting to do something, just do it. Do it really badly, and I don't know. Fuck the police.
No, I don't agree. But I do like the NWA. They're fantastic.
Nice. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.